On page 85, number 1C, we're talking about shifts and movements in supply curves. So I'm going to start in the familiar way, which is to draw my supply and demand model, which places quantity supplied on the x-axis and price that corresponds to that quantity on the y-axis. Because we're talking about supply, I'm going to plot my supply curve here, which is upward sloping from left to right, because I'm operating under the assumption that as prices increase, suppliers will want to put more product out in the market. They want to capture those higher prices, the profits that come with those higher prices. And so in part C, the problem says that immediately after the school year begins, fast food chains must raise wages which represent the price of labor to attract workers. This is a confusingly worded problem, and the reason is because what's being supplied here, is labor. And so where we typically think of laborers as consumers, in this problem, we need to think of them as suppliers. They are supplying their labor. So let's imagine, if we go back over to this supply and demand model, that during the non-school year, so let's say in July, we have at this price, say at let's say $8.50 an hour, we have this much quantity of labor being supplied, this many workers coming to the labor market and saying we want to work at this wage. And then let's think about what happens when the school year begins. What this problem is telling us is that when the school year begins, people drop out of the labor market. What it's insinuating is that they go back to school. And so even at the price of $8.50 now, you see a change in the amount of labor that is going to enter the labor market at that price. It's going to drop. And it's not because of a change in the wage. It's simply just because students go back to school. Remember, we're talking about fast food workers. So here we have the supply shifts. The catalyst in change is not any change in price. Now, the part of this problem that also is confusing is that they add that restaurants then must raise wages in order to attract, I think it's to attract workers. So here's what this is saying here. So let's just actually, let me first, before I move on to the increase in wages, let's say that at $8.50, the new supply after the school year starts is here. So this is quantity supply 2. So maybe this is 500,000 workers that dropped from, say, quantity supplied of 1 million workers when the school year starts. So it moves to the left, it shrinks. Now what this problem is saying, and it's not anything that you necessarily have to draw, but it's just something to think about. Fast food workers want this quantity supplied, the original quantity that they had. They are stuck with the second quantity supplied. So they want to move back to the original quantity supplied. And in order to do that, they have to increase the wage. They have to increase the wage to a place where when I come across and go to this second supply and then come down, I hit this quantity, I hit the original quantity supplied. Now, I haven't drawn this well enough to show where that spot is, but it is like somewhere above here. So they have to increase the wage a lot, like according to my picture, they have to maybe increase it to maybe $15 or $20 an hour to be able to have that original workforce that they had. So that's the logic of this problem. People went back to school with no change in wages. The supply of laborers dropped. And then in order to attract workers again, maybe to get back to the original supply that they had, they have to raise wages. So that's the logic of this problem. And the answer here, as we can see, is that it's a shift in supply, or a shift in the supply curve. I will now move on to 1D in the next video.